Rights Commission took Oscar Bougaardt to court over his anti-homophobic statements. Joining us for further comment on the matter, we're joined in studio by Gushwell Brooks from the Human Rights Commission. Thank you for being with us. Is this a victory, today's judgment, for the tolerance that you advocate?
Good evening, Francis. Yes, of course it is. Because it's very unfortunate that we see this propagation. You know, it seems that I'm here almost every second or third week talking about one form of hate speech, you know. And hate speech within this particular context on the basis of sexual orientation, this sends a very strong message. Of course, what the pastor has been found guilty of is contempt of court. That comes out of a settlement agreement, out of a mediation process, whereby he agreed that he would stop doing these things and stop saying these things on an online platform through social media. He failed to do that, and we took him to court on the basis.
Does the judge believe it's hate speech, though?
That was not really the question that was asked today in the specific proceeding. So, as I said, the context in this particular instance is that there was a mediatory process. We mediated this process. So we sat down with him as well as other parties that had complained about his social media activity. Because since going as far back as 2011, he started making these horrible comments via social media. We then in turn took him, not took him, but rather had a settlement agreement out of a mediation process. That then became an order of court. So in other words, that settlement agreement from the mediation became an order of court. So by him violating that, he's basically in contempt of court. Okay. And that is what we took him to the Equality Court for.
Are you happy with the sentence? So it sounds like he won't serve time unless he does it again, then the sentence kicks in.
So what people need to understand is it's 30 days imprisonment that has been suspended for a period of 5 years. So in other words, if he commits this particular act within the within the 5-year period, then of course he finds himself in trouble. He has gone against this particular judgment, and he will find himself serving time.
And he will find himself in more trouble if someone pursues actual hate speach claims.
Exactly.
Is that possible as well?
Yeah. No, of course. Then obviously we can go back to the Equality Court and then take him through, a hate speech process as well. But apart from that also is, and I think this is what we've learned from the various court cases that we're dealing with at the moment, even the Constitutional Court today, dealing with a particular matter where, someone referred to a black person as a swart man, but also within a particular context. So not just calling someone a swart man is the issue, but there was a context attached to it. The point being that there are multiple legal processes that someone can be put through, and we know that now criminal injuria is something that can be looked at. And there's a long list of other offences that he could be charged with.
What would you say to people who think that this is political correctness gone mad, that you can no longer have a belief on people's behaviour, which religion has pronounced on for centuries?
I think that there's a clear difference. I mean, we listened in the insert now, him calling on ISIS to come and rid us of, whatever he defines as being a problem. And that doesn't sound too biblical or too religious to me. And I'm no theology expert, but at the very same time, people are entitled to believe what they believe. That is a constitutional right that's entrenched. You have the right to religion, opinion, and belief, but that does not entitle you to spread hate speech through your belief. And that is really the fundamental issue. You have your rights, but those rights in turn should not infringe on the rights of other people.
It is a hard area because Christian leaders, Muslim leaders, Jewish leaders, what if they get up and say, we don't believe that homosexual practice is correct for believers? Is that hate speech? Does it border? Is it going to be prosecuted in future? Well,
I mean, we have to subject it to a test, expressing an opinion or stating your belief in that particular context. Within the context that you said, I think it would be very difficult for you to say that that was the propagation of hate speech in that particular instance. Yes, it could be construed as being hurtful or harmful, and that is something that we still yet to test in our courts. To what extent do we define hate speech in this particular instance? But if you look at his utterances, the utterances of Pastor Bougaardt, they were actually, there's no borderline issue here. It was clear hate speech. I mean, calling for people to be stoned to death, calling for people to be imprisoned, calling for people, for ISIS to intervene in this instance, and rid us of this problem, between quotes. that is hate speech.
So clarify further, because everyone wants to know, how do we balance the need for tolerance with the need for freedom of religion, freedom of belief? So where do you think he crossed the line exactly?
So as I said, there is no issue with what people believe, you know, and it's not for the Commission or for the Constitution to dictate to people, to tell them that these are the religious beliefs that you need to adopt, or this is religious beliefs that you need to amend. What the problem is that when you take those religious beliefs and instead of spreading those particular religious beliefs, you then turn it into an issue of spreading hate speech against a protected group. So I could, for argument's sake,
you're saying they're worthy of punishment.
Exactly, because or that I think that this even goes a step further, because this was actually threatening violence against these people, encouraging violence towards them, and that is definitely a very strong threshold for hate speech in this particular instance. That's why in this instance, we're lucky in that this was a clearly definable instance of hate speech, and maybe other instances might arise where the question then gets asked and it has to be tested through the courts. But this was clearly an act of hate speech in this particular instance.
All right, and we'll be speaking in future, no doubt. Thank you very much for explaining very well, as usual, Gushwell Brooks from the Human Rights Commission.